Good day. Goeiedag, fellow South Africans. Okay, I've talked a bit about fake news, okay? And this relates in part to my Sunday live stream this Sunday at 8 p.m. Johannesburg time. Now, what I'm going to be talking about is basically the manner in which the mainstream media, operating on their publishers' narrative, distort stories. I did a search on YouTube, and you can do it yourself. You can search for farm murders, South Africa, CNN, and you'll see the video that comes up next is the only one that has any airplay. CNN have never covered farm murders in South Africa. Now, CNN are the loony left in America. They cover perhaps policemen acting a bit too violently against an African who gets arrested, and he's fine, but they get the video coverage and it becomes big news for the day. But you have a family in South Africa who are murdered on a farm, and they say nothing. They don't cover it. Even though there's coverage, there's YouTube clips, there's a lot of evidence that it happened, they don't go near it because it doesn't fit the narrative. But what does fit the narrative is when these two idiotic farmers, who apparently were trying to intimidate an African because he had been stealing copper wire from their farm. I think he had been taking down their telephone lines. And to intimidate him, they got out a coffin and they pushed him into it just to say, hey, you're in trouble, mate. And then they let him go. And they landed up in court. Guess what? That made huge headlines in America. And one of the videos that follows is the one that CNN put into their news, which was actually run by ABC. Now, CNN, remember, have never touched farm murders in South Africa. But when Donald Trump sent his tweet out in response to Fox News' report on what is going on in South Africa, CNN jumped on it. And you can see for yourself what they say. And I'm going to run that video first, and then you'll see the coffin video after. But this is how distorted the reporting is by the mainstream media in America. It is a complete fabrication. It's not news. As Donald Trump correctly states, it's fake news. Let these two videos speak for themselves, and please go and search YouTube and see if you can find any coverage at all by CNN of the horrific murders that are going on in South Africa of white farmers. And don't forget to subscribe. This Sunday we're talking about land expropriation without compensation and how it's going to damage the South African economy.
Trump directed him to do it all.
Manafort may flip, Cohen may provide other evidence.
The president did nothing wrong. There are no charges against him.
Impeachment. This is what they wanted for a long time.
Amid a storm of legal implications, political questions, and even talk of impeachment,
if I ever got impeached, I think the market would crash.
there it was, a tweet from left field. I've asked Secretary of State Pompeo to closely study the South Africa land and farm seizures and expropriations and the large-scale killing of farmers. The tweet was apparently spurred by a story on the president's favorite channel.
President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has begun, and you may have seen this in the press, seizing land from his own citizens without compensation because they are the wrong skin color.
It's true the South African government is in a fierce debate over politics ahead of next year's elections. Debate on whether to allow some white-owned farms to be seized and handed to black citizens, reparation for years of apartheid. AfriForum, an activist group that mainly represents white South Africans, has called for international intervention.
Millions of people in this country need your protection.
South Africa's president says the issue will be debated by the public and in parliament. But is large-scale killing of farmers underway? Not according to a study last year from a large South African farmers group, which found while violence in rural parts of the country remains high, attacks on farmers have actually been declining. Trump's tweet was based on false information, government officials quickly said, calling them hysterical comments. Still, the false notion of white South African farmers under genocidal fire is a popular trope with white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and conspiracy theorists, some of whom have plenty to like in President Trump. His brutal comments about some African countries, his attacks on protesting football players, and more, even as he insists he's no racist.
I am the least racist person you have ever interviewed. That I can tell you.
So, to be clear, as far as we can find, the president has never before directly tweeted about any issues in Africa, and now that he has chosen to do so, he has forwarded a piece of fake news about the alleged plight of white people living there.
A South African judge has found 2 white farmers guilty of attempted murder after they filmed themselves forcing a black man into a coffin and threatening to burn him alive. Supporters of the victim celebrated in the courtroom after the judge, Sagopat Jamflele, told the accused that for attempted murder of Mr. Victor Malachwa, I hereby find you both guilty. Willem Oosthuizen and Theo Martins Jackson were also found guilty of kidnap, intimidation and assault with intent to do grievous bodily harm. They had pleaded not guilty over the incident last year in the eastern province of Mpumalanga, saying they only intended to scare Malachwa after he allegedly stole copper cables from their farm. 2 clips of footage taken on their mobile phones showed the assailants shoving Malachwa down into the wooden coffin and pressing the lid closed with their boots as he begged for his life. Rival activists from the ruling African National Congress, the main opposition Democratic Alliance and the radical economic freedom fighters rallied outside court and attended each day of the trial. When the first phone footage emerged several months ago, it triggered national outrage and led to the arrest of the 2 men. Please don't kill me, Malachwa begged the men while in the coffin, the footage shown. Why should we, when you are killing our farm, one replied. Malachwa was in court to hear the verdicts against the 2 men, who had alleged that Malachwa had threatened to kill their families and burn farm crops before being forced into the coffin. South Africa is beset by deep-rooted racial inequality 23 years after the end of white minority apartheid rule, and cases of racism have erupted regularly on social media in recent years. Outside the court on Friday, protesters carried mock coffins with pictures of the accused and called for them to be found guilty on all charges. Malachwa said he was walking to the town of Middelburg to buy provisions for his mother and had decided to use a shortcut when the 2 men spotted him.